professional. Can we take a break halfway through and do some like jokes or something?
No, this will be a very relaxed environment. I'll tell you all right now that this is going to be open feedback. So if anyone has anything they'd like to chime in during the presentation itself, I will be allowing opportunity for that throughout different sections.
I know I've said it before in the past, but my general rule of thumb with Sims is also take it with a grain of salt. It assumes perfect play and perfect utilization of any proc and blah 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 in the game, and that is never going to happen.
This is very true. There is always a difference between a perfect world and real life, at least in WoW.
I'm back.
Okay.
Shoot, I don't know if I'll
We'll
have
get
time.
started in just about a couple minutes here.
Okay.
Hello, darling.
While we're waiting, can I take this moment to complain about Valor Stones again?
I don't see a problem
Yes.
with that, though.
Oh my god, just get rid of them. They're so dumb.
Yeah, like it's an unnecessary time gate on an already time gated system.
Yeah.
But it only time gates you at lower item level. Like, all my characters that are high level have more than they could possibly use. And then it's a dumb. I hate it. It's stupid.
Yeah, my mage right now has no Valor Stones and let's see, 230, 50,
More water.
320 crests that I cannot use because I have no Valor Stones.
Yeah, it's if they're not going to get rid of them, just make them an account-wide pool and then increase both the cap or remove the cap, preferably remove the cap. And,
Alright, folks. We are hitting our 8:05 time period. The presentation will begin very shortly. From this point on, I would like to politely ask the courtesy of closed mic until open mic opportunities are given. I will allow opportunity for questions throughout the presentation.
What's that?
But all that I ask is just the courtesy of waiting until that opportunity comes up. But with that being
grab
said,
your
I
hot
will
water?
go ahead and share my primary screen now. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, I'll take that as a no, which is good. Allow me just a moment for share screen.
Get your water.
Perfect. And first, are we good for recording?
We are live.
Perfect.
There you go.
Thanks again, everyone, for coming to today's COD presentation for Raidbots. For official statements, this is a tutorial for Top Gear and Droptimizer. There are also Quick Sim, Advanced, and Legacy tools, including Stat Weight and Gear Compare. However, for today's presentation, we'll be covering the two primary topics, which will again be Top Gear, located on the top left of the home page for Raidbots, and also Droptimizer, which is located
Pay attention
on
to
the
this
top
too.
right of the home page on
You'll be
Raidbots.
utilizing these features.
So before we get started, you may be wondering what Raidbots is. So Raidbots is a tool that allows you to compare your best gear. So why that is useful? You might find yourself in a situation where you have two pieces of gear that are the same. For an example, this could be a weapon. Both of these weapons could be the same item level, but they may have different secondary stats. Raidbots will allow you to compare those two pieces of gear in a simulation environment that's done automatically by a scripted AI that's playing the class for you behind the scenes. This will in tune give you a result and telling you if one item will be better in a specific scenario or if another item will be better in a specific scenario. So this is what Raidbots essentially is at its core. So to start off, we are going to review Top Gear. In our second section, we'll review Droptimizer. Before we get started in our Top Gear review, do we have any questions? Okay, perfect. We are good. I'm going to go ahead and open our Top Gear now. So when I open up Top Gear, you're going to notice this format. It's going to show the different tabs that are very similar to what you see in the home page and are just essentially more links that we can navigate to the different parts of Raidbots through. You're also going to notice that there is a spot here that will state load from SimC add-on. Now, for those who don't use Raidbots, you may wonder what the SimC add-on is. It is titled Simulation Craft in this second section here. I encourage everybody to install this add-on in order to use Raidbots properly. What I will do is I'll show you how this is used within the game once the add-on is already installed. I, however, will not be covering how to install the add-on, just the usage. I will be navigating over to my WoW client. We will be opening chat and typing in /simc. You will see that in my bottom left window. So you guys notice the scripting that just popped up in my screen on the middle? That was a Raidbot script. To copy that script, default by Windows is Control X combined. And again, that's Control X. That will cut the script and automatically copy it to your computer. What we will then do is navigate back over to the Raidbots website. And we will paste it into this section here. And to paste is Control V. Once the information is in, your class, your talents, and all of your gear, both equipped and in your bags, will automatically populate. This will also include all information about your character, including enhancements and talents will automatically be imported into the website. We will now cover how to use Top Gear once the information is imported. Before we continue, does anyone have any questions about the SimC add-on or how to import their data into the Raidbots website?
Pretty straightforward, pretty clear.
I like it.
Excellent.
You guys are fast learners. All right, so here's how we will do this. Scrolling down from here, you will see a variety of different sections involving different information. Before we delve in detail to what these different sections do, I just would like to take a moment to go through each section, reading off what we see and explaining what it does. There is a lot of information on the screen that can very well be overwhelming to a first-time user. So it's good to make sure that we know what you'll be using on a daily basis and what you won't. Starting off under the gear section, we have item sets. This will cover anything in your bag or equipped that qualifies as an item set. For me, this will of course be my tier for Nerubian Palace. and as well as a secondary tier, which I do not have fully completed. And you can see that because we have Void Reaper's contract highlighted. However, Void Reaper's Warblade is grayed out. And on this section, it will tell me 0 set. It will not allow me to click on a 2 set for the minimum set bonus. For all sims, once you have your set piece, I always encourage setting 4 set by default. It's unlikely that Raidbots will consider anything less than a 4 set to be best in slot. It's always good to have this selected just for assurances. Going below, we have item upgrade currency. You won't need to play around with this section too much unless you are upgrading a piece or you want to sim a piece that you don't currently have the currency for. Because what we are seeing right now is the exact amount of Ruined Harbinger crest I have, the exact amount of Gilded, and the exact amount of Valor Stones that I have on my character. If I needed to sim something that required more than what I have, I would need to manually adjust Raidbots to import that. We'll go over that shortly. Catalyst charges. How many catalyst charges do you want to use? Now, we are all aware of the catalyst charge mechanic. We won't go over too much on how to use a catalyst charge. However, I would encourage, if you are willing to use your catalyst charges, if they are not being saved for anything specific, to set this number to the amount of charges that you have. Raidbots will take that into consideration on whether or not it would be a better DPS to use a catalyst charge. This covers the top section of Raidbots. Before we continue, does anyone have any questions? I like it. Very good. So moving down, once we scroll down here, we're going to notice there is an item search. Item search isn't necessary unless you're looking for a specific piece of gear that is in your bag or equipped that you are having trouble finding. For all intents and purposes, I never use it. I would manually find the pieces I need in this section below. It is very neatly categorized. We have head, neck, shoulder, back, chest, wrist, hands, waist, legs, feet, rings, trinkets. And then we also have main hand and offhand down below. Scrolling down below that, we have the enhancement section. Enhancements will allow you to choose what enchantments you are simming. Now, you notice by default, I have a checkbox that says replace existing gems or enchants. For general usage, Raidbots will warn you that large gem or enchant sims may take a very long time. When I simmed this before the presentation, it took a little less than an hour. So for the courtesy of the time that we have here, I do have the sims that I will be showing today already pre-generated as an additional tab on my computer that I will be showing.
Fantastic.
Now, I'll go over how to sim in just a moment because I know that is still a question in a lot of our folks' minds here, and we will cover that. But before we go further in detail, do we have any questions?
I think he's late 20s.
So, Raidbots, or like this will show you also like what your best in slots are and stuff. Is that what you said too?
Correct. It will show you what your best in slots are.
And then it also shows, scroll down again,
Absolutely.
please.
Just let me know when you stop.
The enchants.
Enchants? Okay.
Yeah, so that shows you like what enchants and stuff that you need for your gear as well.
So if you sim replace existing gems or enchants, what it'll do is it will actually sim every possibility. It'll sim every enchant, every gem. So it'll tell you, hey, in order for your character to have the most optimal DPS possible, you're gonna put Authority of Radiant Power on your main hand and your offhand. We're gonna put Crystalline Radiance on your chest. We're gonna put Avoidance on your bracers. But it won't. It's really mostly for the weapon enchants because a lot of other enchants are general just for, like, for example, bracers. You can only choose between avoidance, leech, and speed. So you'll notice how these ones won't be enabled by default. But especially when it comes to the different variety of weapon enchants that we have available, it will be a great resource.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. That's an excellent question. Thank you.
Just chiming in quickly, the ring enchants can also vary. Most classes and specs will have a, unlike Wildhead or Icy Bands, will have a suggested. If you select the different enchants here, though, it will tell you what enchant there is best for your specific character rather than a generic. This is overall your general best stat to get.
So this is like similar to like what is it? Ask Mr. Robot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I haven't
Okay.
used that. Is that a legacy tool?
It was the Raidbots of yesteryear. It still kicks around. It
Okay. We
Yeah.
won't go too in detail.
Yeah.
But thank you, Graham. I appreciate that. So going forward on how to enchant. So let's say in any hypothetical scenario, you get new gear. Um, you want to compare that gear to make sure that it compares. Raidbots is the reason that you see a 606 Mad Queen's mandate on my screen highlighted. Because Raidbots is telling me in a perfect environment where I'm using Mad Queen's mandate off cooldown in the best way possible, it will do the most DPS. But as Grim mentioned earlier at the beginning of our presentation, this is regulated under a perfect environment. So there are hypothetical scenarios where something else might perform better because we are live players that are playing and not a perfect simulation that Raidbots is. So for the sake of practice, I'm going to sim Treacherous Transmitter against Void Reaper's Contract and Mad Queen's Mandate so we can see what happens. What I'll do is I'm going to unclick replace existing gems or enchants, so I am not comparing against all of these different enchantments for my weapons. Down below in iterations, it'll tell me how many combinations I'll be combining. This does have a reflection on how long the sim takes. Since this is a 4 combination sim, it will go through very quickly. Down below, we will see a box that says find top here. You will also see a dialogue that states all raid buffs are selected and you have dungeon slice chosen. If you are trying to sim dungeons, the sim likely has too many buffs. So it's telling me this because I'm doing a dungeon slice sim. However, I have all of my buffs enabled. Now, you can have, I personally like it this way, so I can see how I do in a perfect environment. However, it's not going to be a perfect reflection of what you're going to see in the real world. Down below, you're going to see high precision, 2 times more precise, 4 times slower. I highly encourage always to have high precision enabled by default. It is completely free. It does take longer, however, the simulation is more accurate. So what I'll do is I'll simulate this so we can see which of my trinkets are better. But before I do we have any questions? All right, so I'll go ahead and click on Find Top Gear. We're gonna see this page auto-generate. You will not have to pay any attention to the simulation craft log. The AI will just tell us the different steps along the process. However, we will see job status processing here with a percentage on how long this will take. And we also see the type of simulation that we're running on the top. We know this is a Top Gear simulation on my character Lafa, which is a Havoc Demon Hunter, and we are simming for Dungeon Slice, 5 minutes, one target, weekly. Now, job status is processing. We have about another 75% to go before we get a simulation result. We'll wait for that to populate very shortly. But while we are waiting, do we have any open-ended questions? Anything that anyone would like to ask as far as simming goes, how Top Gear works, or anything in general? Please don't be shy.
Maybe just a comment on Dungeon Slice.
Sure.
Check your classes. Some classes, the APLs, so the simulations that are behind Raidbots, do not work at all for Dungeon Slice. And usually it'll say so.
Very good feedback. I did not know that myself, and that's why it's good to have our peers. So I appreciate that feedback. We have
Yeah,
about
the most reliable is always single target, even if you're going to do like, or you care about a fight that's going to be multi-target. The single target number is usually a good rule of thumb.
Absolutely, especially in our environment where we're using this primarily for a raid, correct? So I agree that is a best practice. I will actually show how to switch this over from Dungeon Slice to single target. I believe it is called Patchwork, if I remember correctly, but I'll cover that very shortly, just for those folks who would like to know. But as we can all see, this is a very time-intensive process, which is why I have two of the reports that we'll be covering quickly automatically generated. We are now at 100%, so it's going to generate the report and populate a new screen. So at the top, we have our Top Gear DPS, which is 1.655 mil DPS. This is on a cleave. So you would like to keep in mind that this is not my single target. Below it shows the talents that are selected under that BIS. This is my primary talent tree, which is called FS High Mover Inertia. It will show all the talents part of your Top Gear and all the gear that's part of your Top Gear. If we scroll down below, it will tell you if there are any changes. So we see how when we scroll down to this section, it shows equipped, which is telling me that what I have equipped right now is already my Top Gear for what I am comparing. Now, a really cool thing about this feature is that you can see the difference in performance between the two different items that you're comparing, or more if you're doing a larger sim. So for example, if I had Treacherous Transmitter and Void Reaper's Contracts, I would do 1.637 mil, which would be a negative 17,000 on my DPS by average. However, with what I have equipped right now, which is my 606 Mad Queen and my 626 Void Reaper, I will do 1.655, which is averagely 17,000 larger than the previous trinket. So before we go further on the next section of our tutorial, this does cover the majority of Top Gear, aside from briefly covering how to switch what you're simming to single target. Does anyone have any questions about this screen? Okay, sounds like we're good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, on the top left corner, back to Top Gear, and I quickly wanna cover the suggestive feedback on how to sim for single target. So we're gonna scroll all the way down, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. And for simulation options, we're going to see fight style. Right now, by default, it is selected on Dungeon Slice. I will click the drop down arrow here. And patchwork will be at the very, very top. We have plenty of other options you can experiment with, but for primary purposes, you'll likely be toggling between Dungeon Slice for M plus simming and patchwork for raid simming. I will not be simming the patchwork just for the sake of our time here. I want to make sure we're being effective and straightforward in our tutorial. But I will move over to the second section, which is titled our Droptimizer discussion. Before we move forward to Droptimizer, does anyone have any final questions about Top Gear? Okay. Now I would like to bring this up. I did forget to bring this up originally, so I apologize. However, we may remember that on the enchantment section, I had replaced existing gems or enchants. When I click that, it pops up to 49 combinations because of the amount that I'm generating. If I navigate to this tab, I actually did this exact simulation already, including catalyst charges. So we can see that Top Gear was able to find 2 upgrades for me and highlighted them for me. So when that sim was done in the 37 minutes that it took in our processing time at the top right, it has determined that my belt would be upgraded to a catalyst, my feet would be upgraded to a catalyst, and I would put Defender's March 3 on
Nice.
my feet. And this would be my Top Gear compared to everything else. It will show you how this stands as a difference to your current gear down below. We'll have equipped 1.650. With the very top combination possible, we have 1.655. It is a minor difference. However, the difference is there and it is real. So since we had no questions about Top Gear, I will move on over to our Droptimizer discussion. We click on Droptimizer from the top tab. I will just make sure that we have our updated Lava information from the SimC add-on. Did a Control V. That's just from push to talk. All right, so once we generate this here on Droptimizer, we will see multiple options. So this is really cool because you can actually compare different instances to see the loot that comes from that instance in a variety of different item level environments to see what would be the best upgrades for you. This will be especially useful in our coming of season 2, where we will be introducing new M plus dungeons and of course our new raid. In general, anything that is on higher item level will, generally speaking, be a better upgrade at the beginning. However, this will prove to be very effective to see the percentage of a difference that you're getting with different gear. So this section will be very brief, not nearly as complex as Top Gear was in its sense, but the way this will work is it'll show you 3 different tabs. We have the sources section, the dungeon section, and dungeon level. So for the simulation that I did as an example, I compared Mythic Plus dungeons I simmed all dungeons, and I simmed it for a plus 10 vault. The reason why I did this is because as a player, I primarily now focus on plus 10 vaults, where I would run a plus 10 key in the hope of getting the vault items that I need. Now, not everyone is a plus 10 Mythic Plus player, so you can adjust this according to the difficulty that you run. If you like to run plus 4s, on this section here, you would click Mythic 4, and it would adjust accordingly. It would tell you the dungeon level, the item level that you can be expecting from that Mythic 4, and you would be able to sim the results. Items to sim, it will tell you everything that you can get. If you are already wearing the same item or a better version, it will tell you and it will be grayed out. So for art purposes, I want to display what it looks like when you do this simulation. So if I hit run Droptimizer down at the bottom of my screen right now, it will be running in Dungeon Slice because that is how I ran the sim earlier. And I will show you how that result came. Now, this is our Droptimizer simulation. I ran this earlier this morning, 8 hours ago. However, my item level hasn't changed very much between the past 8 hours, if at all. So this is pretty accurate to live time. We see some different detail here, a dungeon summary of the priority that these different pieces of gear would come to you. So we can see that my priority 1 on the right side is Mist of Turna Scythe. And we can all laugh here. I know it's everyone's favorite dungeon. We have Trail Spinner Pendants, which is a neck piece for me. And Raidbots is telling me that this would be a 7.2% upgrade. Going below, if that wasn't available, it would tell me what these different vault pieces would be and a percentage upgrade for me. So when I open my vault next Tuesday, this is the first place I'm going to go to, just to identify if, hey, am I going to use this or am I not going to use this? Going down below, Droptimizer will tell you the DPS difference. So if I were to get this Mist of Turna Scythe beautiful pendant, I could expect hypothetically a 119,000 DPS increase. So this is a summary of how that works. And if I wanted to sim it for raid, what I would do is quite simply keep all the information the same. I will scroll up to the top of Droptimizer. I will click on Neurobar Palace. I will sim it for Heroic since CRD is currently running Heroic content. Base level up. Always select this to the highest that you can afford. That way you know you're simming properly to the amount of gilded and valor that you have. But this pretty much covers the primary functions of Raidbots, going from Top Gear to Droptimizer. As a recap, you can use Top Gear to compare the different pieces of gear that you already have to find the best value out of what you're holding. And from Droptimizer, you can use this as a focus to find out what you'll be farming. Hey, from Neurobar Palace, what item here, what raid ball should I really be focusing on? But aside from that, this is the official end of the presentation. I will leave this open for open discussion for any questions before we close off the recording itself. Does anyone have any feedback or questions?
just really quickly, because I don't think you mentioned it with um, the Top Gear, the way you can easily see that it's suggesting a change to something is that it'll have it highlighted. So it'll have the piece highlighted if it says, hey, this is a change from your item. It will have the gems highlighted if the gems are changing, and likewise, it'll have the enchant highlighted if it's saying, hey, there's a better enchant you can have.
Thank you, Grim. I might have missed that. I appreciate that.
I have another suggestion for people that I find very convenient on Tuesdays. Um, if you open your vault and then you do the /simc while your vault is open, and you paste that into Raidbots, as Lata showed us earlier, it will actually have little tiles for what's in your vault. So you'll get to sim all of your vault choices before you actually have to pick an item. So I find that very convenient.
I also find that very convenient. I forgot to bring that up, so I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. It's absolutely going.
Where did you say that was? I'm so sorry. Could you show us where that is?
Yes. So what I'll do is go to the base screen for Raidbots and Top Gear. And when the information pulls up on Tuesday, when you go to open your vault, what you'll first want to do is generate your vault so it has the gear populated. So just open up the vault. You don't have to pick an item yet. But then you'll go back to the WoW client and do a SimC. And then when I copy that over, it will show me the vault items. So let's say that I got a really beautiful mythic tier Mad Queen's Mandate on Tuesday. I would love that. But it would pop up here and it would show as a vault item. So there'll be a little logo here. I believe it says vault on it. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But it will indicate that it is a vault item. You would be able to click on it as an item and sim it appropriately. Another thing that I'd like to mention that I don't believe I covered is that you can adjust the item level to what you're simming. So let's say, for example, I wanted to sim this Harvester's Eat at 610. I could click it, and I'm gonna say I want to actually sim it as a 623 because all I have to pay to upgrade it to 623 is 290 Valor Stones. So let's do that. So I can actually see, hey, what's this gonna do as a 623 item level rather than just a 610 before I decide to invest my Valor Stones or my crest into that. Does that answer your question of practice?
It does. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It'll have a the vault items will have a little blue triangle in the, I think it's the upper right hand corner that just says GB, and similar to that, the catalyst items will have a icon up in the same corner just with Kata or something like that.
Thank you very much.
And I do, if I could, just make a comment just so other people understand. When you first do this, if you've never done it before, you're probably going to see a lot more options for you to take of improvement versus where you have been doing it, with your character for quite some time, if not forever, and therefore you already have the direction that you've been heading. So the stuff we're seeing on the screen, right, is all stuff that you were told at one time was your best option at that time, and then you've kept it, right?
So I am a type of individual who hoards all my items because things can consistently change through different patches. One day, Treacherous Transmitter might be my best, and another day, hey, Treacherous Transmitter just got more 10%. Do I still want to use that? So what you're seeing here is a reflection of everything that's in my bags and everything that I have equipped. I do not know if it'll show gear in your bank. Someone can chime in here if they do know. But this will compare everything that you own.
Glad to know I'm not alone in my hoarding tendencies.
You are definitely not.
Okay, first they laugh and laugh and laugh until something changes and you get a trinket buffed it.
Exactly.
It's like I knew I was holding on to that forever for a reason.
Exactly.
I believe it does ignore your bank.
Okay, thank you, Grim. Perfect, but that is the end of our presentation. Do we have any final questions?
Just one additional thing in regards to the vault items. It is smart enough to know if you've selected like 2 or 3 items from your vault and you sim it, it'll only tell you to select one item. It knows you can't pick multiple items from the vault.
Nice.
Correct. Raidbots is optimized to know, essentially foolproof in a way. It'll tell you when errors occur in your combination that are conflicting. So I appreciate that feedback.
I don't know if you mentioned it at all, but whenever you're doing all this simming and stuff, and you see like the number, and it's like, oh, 1.5 million single target. That's an optimized scenario where you're not moving or doing anything else besides doing a perfect rotation, hitting your potions correctly, hitting your cooldowns perfectly. So, like a good rule of thumb is to pretty much take about 20% off of whatever you do, and that's kind of your goal. If you make higher than that, then that's great. If you don't be like bummed out that you weren't doing like 2 billion damage, you know.
Yeah.
So just kind of keep that in mind when you do a sim.
That's why I said 75%.
Number,
So if you can do 75% of what your sim is,
circumstances,
you're doing well.
A lot of circumstances, like in raid, if you're doing high movement or whatever, it's going to be a little bit less than that. So I always do like a 20% reduction of whatever that is, and if I get better, I get better. You know, if I don't, I don't. That's kind of the rule of thumb that I've gone by.
That's a good suggestion. Don't expect yourself to be as good as the sim. You want to remember that the sim is assuming 100% uptime, best case scenario, where you're doing everything perfectly. And we all know in a perfect world, that doesn't happen. Mistakes happen, rotation issues happen, uptime issues happen. So a lot of the times it doesn't become a reality. So don't hold yourself to that simming number. It's just a way of comparing. Like you said, you can definitely measure yourself, cut off 20%, see if you can meet that number just to kind of gauge yourself. But that's also really good feedback. Thank you.
Unless you're Kilgore, then you're perfect.
Yeah,
like
I'm not saying you can't make the numbers. I'm just pointing it out that unless you're doing everything perfect, and depending on if you have all the buffs selected, or if you're in a raid group, you're going to be doing more because you have all the buffs. If you're in a dungeon, you might be doing a little less because you don't have as much buff, but you're doing more AOE. So there's a lot of variables, but it's a good starting point. It kind of lets you know that especially with the equip using all the good gear, at least you're optimized to where you're capable of doing the numbers and everything goes well.
Absolutely. Do we have any other comments or suggestions before we end the live stream?
I do want to say, Latha, that with your premium subscription, you also have other features too that people can access. So if people are interested, he has more options. He can look at things like even at a higher resolution in terms of breaking down your mechanics and your performance. So if you're interested in all that stuff, please utilize Latha, because he has purchased this for us. So let's not have it go to waste.
Absolutely. As Perth mentioned, don't hesitate to be shy. A lot of you know me. I'm always in Discord call. If I'm online, just hanging out, chatting, running Mythic Plus. So I am always here to help. Right now I can sim
Did
up
she
to
have an
16
accident?
million,
No way.
It just smells like she pooped.
populations, which is A high
Maybe she just
combination to
farted.
the default. I don't remember what the default is, but I know it's not quite as high. But please don't hesitate to reach out if there's a large sim you want me to run that for any reason is too high for you to run yourself, or even if there's a question that you thought of that we didn't cover in today's presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me as well, and we can figure it out together.
Just from experience, the highest sims you're going to get, the highest number of iterations are going to be your gems. Especially if you've got everything that you can have gems in them with gem slots. Those will very easily get up to like that 16 million mark.
Absolutely. Gems and enchants are the big ones. Perfect. So I do want to put a hard stop on this. We are approaching 8:50. I want to make sure we allow a 10-minute buffer period at the very least for our alt raid. But I very thank everyone for attending. We have a lot of audience here. It means a lot to me and CRD as a whole. So I appreciate you all attending.
Gosh, we appreciate you, Latha. Thank you for all the work that you've done in preparing for tonight.
Absolutely. So I will
Thank
end
you,
the
Latha.
live stream. You're welcome.
Thank you, dude. Super cool of you to do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I will stop my live stream, and then I'll see you guys in about 10 minutes
We'll also
for
just
alt raid.
comment on